From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent? The man who lifts condominiums off his chest. Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello everybody, it's James here and it's Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. We'll get the plugs out first, dontherockmorocco.com for all your signed merchandise and amazon.com or .co.uk or wherever you're from for books of the Rock and Owen Hart. The reason I'm doing this intro incredibly quickly is because I've got to go in a strict hour's time. So, for this hour we have an hour's worth of questions or however many we get through. And Don, are you ready to receive questions thick and fast?
Fire away.
Okay, then, the very first one is from Chris Maddox. Who do you think the greatest ring announcers were?
Everybody has their own territories. You mean Howard Finkel announcers?
Yeah. Not commentators.
Or Gordon Soley announcers?
No. The Howard Finkel ring announcers. Now coming to the ring.
Oh God, everybody has their favorite. Jimmy Lennon, back when I first, not the Son, although the Son sounds exactly like him. The Son does all the a lot of the boxing and different matches now. But Jimmy Lennon Sr., he was in the old Olympic. He had the boxing and the wrestling. I don't know if he had roller derby, but he was there forever. Of course, Howard Finkel, my good friend Howard Finkel, he was good, great, voice of Madison Square Garden and that upper Northeast quadrant for a long time. You know, he called all the main events and stuff, all the big ones for quite some time. And other than that, I don't know. Just wherever, your own area, where you came from.
This might be a good time to actually bring up Howard then. So you just said your good friend, first time meeting Howard. And what were his duties backstage in the early 80s?
Well, he didn't have any backstage duties. He was a TV. He just did TV work and then a lot of the book work and the organization for Junior. When Junior was living up in Cape Cod, I guess, and Howard was from down in New Haven area there. I don't know how they got together, but Howard was there already, and then he grew into that spot there. Then he grew up. He ended up a big senior vice president for WWE.
You said he was a good friend. What did you like about Howard?
I was just always talking, he was a New York Jets football fan, gridiron fan. He loved loved his Jets, hated the New England Patriots. Probably the only time you catch him swearing when he's talking about those no good, cheating, rotten Patriots, because they'd always beat the Jets. But yeah, he was a big Jets fan. I used to talk sports and stuff, and it worked. I watched, he and Vince interact in those early days, early TVs.
Was because obviously he was a huge wrestling fan, and he'd always wanted to work for the WWF, and he enjoyed working there, and he was there for way over 30 years, I think, all told. But the fact that he stayed there for so long, and supposedly he was the guy in the office that if you wanted to bully somebody, bully Howard Finkel. Did he have the reputation for you at least? Where
I don't know. I wasn't that close to the office operations.
No, but a lovely guy though. So I hear.
Yeah. Good guy. I introduced him to his wife. Early they divorced, but she was a fan from Cape Cod. And she had some kind of brain surgery. She wrote me fan letters and stuff. I didn't, I had none of that. So, and he ended up as intermediary or something. It was all in the same area in Connecticut, man. Massachusetts and there, and that's how I ended up marrying her, Kathy.
So you introduced him to his ex-wife?
Yeah, I was a little Cupid there. I shot my arrow into his heart.
There we go.
They were married for quite a while. She probably walked away with a nice fat package too.
Yeah, probably. Well, you got someone to pay off. There you go.
Yeah.
Right, I'll move on then. Matthew McCullum. Hello, gents. This is a very long one. So now this is going way back to the late 80s. I'm 47 now. I'm thinking this was 88. Anyway, I grew up in London, Ontario, Canada, and would regularly attend the shows at the London Gardens. I vividly remember a show where there was an apparent snowstorm and many of the talent arrived late due to weather conditions. The crowd was not initially told about the delays, but many of us figured something was up when the opening women's tag match, which the Jumping Bomb Angels were in, went almost an hour. After the crowd was informed that the weather issue and the weather was an issue, and they reworked the card and put on matches with the talent who were there after intermission. It seems the talent had started arriving, so they basically started the advertised card after that. To give it a little more context, Don was a babyface and tagging with Bam Bam Bigelow at the time. So this was 88, I think. My questions are, does Don have any memory of that night? If not, was this something promotions did regularly? If there was a weather issue, or if they knew certain performers would be late? There you go.
Phew.
Man,
what was that again?
Man, the amount of saliva that was building up in my mouth while I was reading that as well.
What was that again? No, yeah, if the weather was bad, you'd try and bring this, like we talked about wrestling without mats and stuff last time. Yeah, if the weather's bad, you stretch it out, or somebody's caught, there's a main event, or somebody didn't make a plane connection or something like that. Naturally, anybody, rock concerts, anything, that's able to go off like that, it can. As wrestling, goes on individual matches, it's not like a basketball game or hockey game, where it's a whole team playing one continuous, but you can send 2-3 good tag team out there. It goes long. I remember, I'm sure everybody's been in that position once or twice in their career. What's his name, stuck at the airport, go out, get me as much time as you can.
How long was the latest that you were ever late? Like, how late have you been for a show? Or have you just completely missed shows due to travel issues or something else?
I've missed shows due to, snow and planes or car wrecks, you're on the road 300 something days a year. You fall victim to the weather, just because you're main event in Springfield, Mass. Doesn't mean it's not going to snow. It's not going to snow there tonight, or something like that. You're a victim as anybody else would be, any other person trying to get to a job or trying to, and our position, is usually traveling a distance to get to your town or your particular area. Very seldom we're in that town, for the day or to live there, So yeah, there's always, like the weather, it's changeable.
You mentioned car wrecks. Assuming that Matt Bourne wasn't driving the car, how many car wrecks have you been in over the years?
Several. Nothing serious, luckily. Briscoe and I were his Mercedes. Some guy pulled out in front of us, headed to Macon or Columbus. Headed, underneath the spinning around and stuff one time. I remember that was and a couple other accidents. Falling asleep on the road and remember driving to the side of a mountain or something. I haven't been in a lot like some of the guys have.
Have you ever fallen asleep at the wheel?
Yeah, I think I probably, yeah. My last, this is when I longshoreman, but my last night at night, and I wouldn't go to work nights after that. I have a long mountain, along through the cane fields, coming back to the North Shore, leaving the last town and coming in. It's just a long, pretty much a straight drive. This is like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I don't, it wasn't really a set if I was asleep or that all those years in the docks, 20 something years, I never fell asleep coming home. But this one night, I must have just, tripped out or, zoned out. Because I just remember click the blue lights coming on when I was down at the bottom of the hill. I knew the cop sat there. It's the cop that sits there, you sit there all the time in the morning, early morning hours is when I was coming home, finish up a boat or night shift got finished at 4:30 or something in the morning. So you're coming home, it's still dark and but I don't remember not just a cold bang, those blue lights coming on. Oof. And I jumped. I looked down at my speedometer, I was going like 65, 75 miles an hour down and headed for and I said, whoa. I told the cop, thanks. I said, I don't know what happened. I said, I don't know what I said, I wasn't drinking. So I don't know what happened. I just, I said, I know the whole 9 yards about coming down the mountain here. It's 45, 40, 35, and the thing, I said, I know her. So he went boom and he just looked me up and didn't give me a ticket, just let me ride. And I saw him a couple of weeks later. I told him, hey, thanks, man. I said, you woke me up. I must have I didn't know that I did, but I figured I must have fallen asleep at the wheel. And the many times, we used to go 300 and 400 miles, one way. And lots of times by ourselves, hook up with somebody or.
Well, that was the reason for if you had a car full of people, the rule was that nobody could fall asleep in the car. Because if one falls asleep, you never know who else is going to fall asleep.
Where was that rule at?
Oh, well. Apparently no territory you work then. I have heard that before, though.
Yeah, I don't know. When Pedro Godoy used to take his pillow, Leroy Brown. That guy would be asleep before he pulled out of the parking lot.
Did anyone rib you and pretend to fall asleep at the wheel and then you freak out? Because I've also heard that as a rib that some old timers would play.
Oh, gee, I don't know. Not that I know of. Piper was the world's worst driver. He didn't have to rib. He'd be looking everywhere but the road, driving across the highway. Oh my God. Yeah.
I will move on. Next one, Peter D. Don, you mentioned that at Allentown and Hamburg you would do promos all day at each town before the matches. When did you get time for the gym on these days, or did you skip workouts on these days?
Whatever, in the morning it's close. So normally you come there after the garden. So obviously you miss a day. Then they have a gym gyms in Allentown. They have gyms everywhere. Catch you in the morning. Catch you workout early. If
Did you ever get involved on carrying the wheel with you or something?
Yeah. Bob gave me a wheel. Bob made me a couple of wheels. The one he made never wore out. I don't know. He tried to market it, but it didn't do any. Because you get any other wheels and they all wear out or after a period of time. He made them that they ball bearings and stuff in them. They would never. It didn't wear out. I had it for years.
Were there any more creative ways of working out while at the arena? Beyond push-ups or steps or something.
Squats, push. That's. In Japan they had the weights in the truck, and oh God, some guys are just the rubber hose guys like Snuka, Luthez, and some of those guys. They would just pull the rubber hose, and that was it.
Right? Is this the rubber hose? So basically, just just a resistance thing.
Yeah. That was an old timers had that the rubber, and it worked. It was just worked pretty good. I ended up getting one. Everybody had, threw it in your bag.
So you had a bag full of rubber hose and a wheel.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else you must have had in there.
And my boots and shaving stuff, gear.
I shall move on to this next one. This is one that I'm sure has been wanting to be asked for a while. David Rish says, I was wondering if Don has any Mel Phillips stories.
No.
Well, maybe not firsthand,
No.
but...
No. I only heard, I just heard remarks about him in the early days, just different guys would, or people, I don't want my kid around here or something. But I never saw any of these guys in action. Or even knew that they were in action.
When was the first time you started hearing rumours about, one, it's young boys, and two, it's the foot fetish thing? Was this like from day one that people knew this about him, or just over time towards the late 80s?
It wasn't toward the long after. What for me, maybe referees or other guys around or something, and that had been there for years, knew what was going on. But as a guy coming in and out, I had no idea, what he was into.
What was so? Oh right, so like the word on the street was just muttered whispers, or was there anything specific, or any wrestlers saw something, or like was it just like that vague?
I don't know if any wrestlers even talked about, even cared about, Well, Mel Phillips. He was a gopher in the back. He never, and he was never much of a presence around the boys, and never, he would get something or need an autograph or something. He was just with the ring crew and those guys, he was never really around the guy, never really around the group, any group that I was, any group that I was associated with.
So you found out then, basically, when the world found out.
Yeah, hearsay, just, why somebody making a wisecrack? What?
Well, who would have made who would have made the wisecrack then? Would it have been more likely one of the referees or someone in that circle?
Yeah, it would have, somebody not connected, somebody's girlfriend or some, some girl around the matches, the kids or something, would just be an offhanded, nothing that I would take seriously or not have knowledge about or a background of. And
no, that's fine.
And now I hear the stories, and like I said, I never.
Do you ever go back and think, God, did I miss a clue there? Or something like the same with
Terry.
Terry
Yeah,
Garvin.
all the things I did. Well, I think a lot of guys too did. Pass through life, and maybe didn't see everything that was going. And missed a lot of stuff. When you're that type of person that does so, been exposed to so many things,
how
many roads did I go down?
Is it the same thing as Terry Garvin? It's like people knew he was gay, or did he have more of a reputation that he liked them on the young side?
There's a guy, knew he was gay, but that was it. Just heard, that he was around when he was with Ronnie and Jimmy in Atlanta. I tell that story about me being in the prison.
Yeah.
With Terry, me wrestling Terry in the prison. And he started doing his Big Mama routine, and that was my first episode as a heel. My first experience as a heel. All the prisoners started hooting and hollering. But nobody, it was nobody hung around. Even Pat was half-assed in the closet. He wasn't, but he was, even Pat was kind of in the closet. He was a big shot, And then you even look whose Dark Side came out about some wrestler in the 90s. Somebody that didn't want, was a big stigma to him being what? He wouldn't come out. Johnny something.
I don't know.
Fargo or something like that. I don't know.
No, it's all right. We'll move on then. I will go to Juan Under. What are your thoughts on wrestlers saying Vince McMahon is a master manipulator? There's always a story about someone going into his office upset, wanting to quit, or angry about a payoff. Then they come out and everything is suddenly different. Are Vince's promises that good?
What else you got? Well, what are you going to weigh it against? Bill Eadie had Japan. Some other guys got stability, but if you have, you're thinking of, going into the millions, into the years and stuff, the longevity and stuff. They're still scheming with with the NXT and the NEW and Hall of the Ring of Honor and all those avenues they've created. You think that the WWF, WWE consolidated and took all the business away, seemingly, which it did for a short time, and killed all the territories. But now, as it seems, they're opening up, as they have to do, on a cable basis with the AEW, and I don't know anybody else, but I've read about Ring of Honor and some other guys,
Yeah.
and NWA, some other Texas promotion, and some other stuff like that. But it's becoming where because you can't operate without cable, and you have to be that unless you could break down the your territory and have it that well under control.
I think specifically the question is saying Vince McMahon as someone who can control your mind, in the sense of because I've heard the stories as well where, let's say, I think Kevin Nash may have said this. He's gone in, he's been given some creative, and he's thought it was rubbish. So he goes to Vince McMahon and says, "I'm not into this." And then by the time the meeting is over, nothing has changed. He's just left the room thinking that the idea is now brilliant, and nothing has actually changed. Vince McMahon is just that convincing. Have you ever gone to Vince and said, "I'm not happy about this," and then at the end of the meeting, been on his side of the, change your opinion completely to match Vince's?
I don't know that I was ever in that position, but Vince could sell a bucket of sand to an Arab. He is right. He's Saudi Arabia, and he's got all these deals. And I was in the UAE with Fuji, Jim Troy. We're calling the shots back there in Abu Dhabi and Bahrain and that whole thing there. So it's and then India. I mean, the horizons are unlimited with this TV org. So you think you scope it just that he's plotting about you, and he's the master manipulator, or one of them. So you're just a little pimp on the guy's butt. He's screwing everybody over. He's bullshitting their TV people and politicians. His wife, was with
He's with the Trump
Donald
organization,
Trump, right? Yeah. So his politicians and TV people and Cyndi Lauper's David Wolf. His hands are everywhere.
Did you at TV tapings, or at later TV tapings, when you wanted to go and see Vince, he'd have an office and then there'd always be a queue of wrestlers outside waiting to speak to him? Did you ever have to stand in the queue, to wait an hour to speak to Vince about a payoff or anything like that?
No. Well, maybe in the later days. That was after, when I was there most of the time, you're talking to Senior for the first couple, 2-3 years. And then after that, you never got back. You never got to an office. Maybe Vince would have, a room in the garden. Or, he never showed. In those days, he would only show up for the paper, and they weren't as plentiful as they are now. He'd show up for pay-per-views and TVs. And it was a different, it was a different series, different lineup back then. It wasn't, I don't know what they go through now, but with the click and all those other things that were going down. That came all after me.
As you say, he's a hard man to get hold of. That's why you never got your $800 reimbursement for those UAE flights.
Oh, yeah.
I'll move on then. Joe Fox, I would like to know who gives the hardest headbutts that he's ever experienced. I've seen him take a hard one with Superfly Jimmy Snooker. Thanks, love your podcast.
Okay. Hardest, Nef Mayava. The first one I saw with the Coco, but then Bobo Brazil and Superfly. They all like coconuts. All have heads like coconuts.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Nef Mayava, because I wrote about him in the book I wrote about The Rock a little bit, and I know very little of him. Give me some Nef Mayava. He was a big star in Hawaii in the 50s and 60s, I believe.
Oh, yeah. He was one of the first guys from here to tour. He went on the road. I think he was around Texas. I don't know exactly where he went, probably. He was there in the Stamp Steamboat. But he went on the road, then he came back. Big Samoan follow. He had Curtis to work with back in the early days. And Curtis was a global heel. Global star all over the world. So they had some riots. They had fights fighting out in the street. And Curtis's father was the chief of police in Hawaii, and they stormed. Samoan. Man, especially if this is back in the '60s, too. You couldn't get that kind of heat on a Samoan wrestler. Asking for trouble, he later in the '80s and '90s when Peter was there, and I was screwing over Peter all the time. You could they're still charging the ring. After Vince had smartened everybody up and everything else, they're still running in the ring to save Peter.
I believe that Nef was the first Polynesian star to leave Hawaii. Is that probably true?
Yeah. Well, Johnny Walker was wrestling too. Two. Johnny Walker. Steamboat left after those days. Luthez came up, and he found Sammy Steamboat. And he took Steamboat with him to St. Louis and wrestled with him. Steamboat was like his sheriff, his sergeant at arms for Lou. But Lou had balls. See, he went to Japan with just his wife, no posse, no nothing, and went and Dozan and everybody. He was a ballsy dude.
Before we move on to the next question, just tell us a bit more about Nef's presentation, because I believe he was doing the fire spinning and traditional dancing and the whole bit. He had a real presentation along with his wrestling.
Yeah, he started early with the fire dancing, the knife dancing and stuff. We lived right down the road here in Lae, Kuku, where he was from, and then. He had the thing where you grab his hair. I never worked. I was a kid, but you'd grab his hair and he'd turn around a couple times, and supposedly you'd have your fingers locked in his hair, and he'd beel you with his head. In his head, you couldn't pull his hair. You only pull his hair only for leverage, stuff like that. He was a big carder. I read Blassie. He and Blassie do a couple of big houses, big heat. Blassie was. This when Blassie was hot too.
Where's this, in Los Angeles or Hawaii?
No, Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Not even the big buildings, the small building. Civic Auditorium, 5,000, 4,000, high fours, low fives capacity.
I will move
Blassie
on.
Getting heat with a popcorn wrapper, blinding. I just
Oh dear. Next one, Party Marty 520 asks, did you ever work Adrian Street? Have you have written this really? Have you any stories about him? So, same question for Gino Hernandez, but we've already dealt with Gino. So Adrian Street, the exotic.
Never met the man. No, never. I was. He was around Pensacola, and I think he left Florida before I came back into there. But
Yeah.
and he was. No, I don't know where he was.
He was.
I never met them.
Yeah, he was in Memphis, I believe, for a while. He also was in
Okay.
like
Yeah.
Mid-South UWF in the late years, I think. And that was pretty much it. He didn't really. He may have turned up in Jim Crockett Promotions briefly, but that was more or less it. And then he moved to Florida, probably.
Yeah, I never had the pleasure. Never met him. He'd get some pretty good heat. He was a shorter fellow, wasn't he?
Yeah, 5'6", 5'7".
Yeah, he was a shorter guy. I heard. I heard. Like I said, I never met him.
He
Guys would knock him or knock somebody.
he lives a few hours away from me, so I'd actually really like to interview him. He's probably one of the guys more than anything else because he's got quite the story. If you ever know anything about him,
Well, he did the gig gimmick way back when,
yeah, in the '60s.
Yes, 60s, 70s.
I think.
So, yeah.
Well, I know he was a big star in Britain for years and years as well, but I believe he actually
Oh,
started in
maybe.
the '60s.
Okay. All right.
And apparently
I was thinking the one.
he influenced a lot of people, including Mark Bolan of T-Rex. If the band T-Rex, if I don't know if they were big in America, they were big over here.
I heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, 20th Century Boy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'll move on. Motorhead711 says, can you name 5 people during your career you never had an opportunity to wrestle but always wanted a match with?
Flair.
You did wrestle Flair, though, but only in tags. Was that right? Or
Yeah, but he was like 300 pounds. He was just breaking in. And it wasn't the Ric Flair. It was Rick somebody, and just, he was just, he wasn't even in the business. He was at home, was in Minneapolis, was in Minnesota, somewhere. I think it was in St. Paul, because Wally Carbo chewed me out for letting him heel on me. Said, "Oh, we didn't want you to do that. We wanted you," but he wanted to be a heel. He was hanging around with Dick and anyway, Flair, Thez. I never worked with Thez.
he was quite active, Thez, wasn't he? I mean, when did he stop being active? Because he seemed to wrestle full time, like way into his 50s.
Yeah, he was still not a lot though. He would be pretty much by the time when I was first came in, he wouldn't. I was just first couple of years in the business. Nowhere near getting a match. It wouldn't be to my later part of my career. After I'd been around for a while, been a heel and stuff, I would have had the or younger Jack Briscoe days, but I would have the opportunity to work with him. But I never. Well, Johnny Valentine Sr., number 1. I never worked with him. Bruno, number 3. I never worked with Bruno. Who's another?
We've got 4. Did you ever?
The Crusher. I was a baby face when I was around the Crusher, but it would have been cool working with him.
Did you have any singles with Dory?
I would have done a Bobo Brazil with him. He would have wiped the auditorium with me.
Did you have any big singles matches with like Dory or Terry Funk?
Yeah, Dory. No, Buckwinkle. No, I don't think any big matches. I had some matches with them, but never big hour long, Broadways and stuff. Not even a build up to Jack Briscoe or anything. I never got to never worked with Dory.
So for the fifth
And when
name,
Terry was coming in, so
I was going to say for the fifth name, were we saying the Crusher, or but no, carry on, please. With Terry, was this?
no. No, I just no. Terry was a heel and I was a babyface, but he was only working. He was coming in to work with Dusty and Jack. Half the time he had the title, and the other half the time he's just working angles with Dusty. You know, there was office deals. You know, so they were using the Funk Side Amarillo, and see who else. I never worked with Gagne, and a couple of those guys, you know.
I'll move on then. I'm Not Booked Terry asks, which wrestler had the best devil's lettuce? Can't wait to hear this one. Love hearing James and Dom.
Devil's lettuce, what's that?
Weed.
Weed?
Who had the best weed? Someone else.
Probably
suggested...
me. I know where to get it.
Someone else suggested it was the Briscoes.
Nah. They're the Colombian junk for years. Till they got their orange grills going. That was until just a few years ago.
Oh,
20 years ago.
Were you suggesting that they were growing their own at some point and getting the good stuff in?
Yeah, after a point. Not till later. Not till recently.
Hidden amongst
allegedly. I'm not. I don't know anything. But
yeah, we'll definitely say allegedly there. I'll move on. Thomas Comfrey, how did Don get on with Bill Eadie and Barry Darso? Also, and you invented the gimmick, the demolition gimmick, of course. Also, did Mr. Fuji prefer managing tag teams over single wrestlers? So, memories of Bill Eadie and Barry.
I knew Bill. First met Bill in Atlanta. That summer, I was down there in Georgia and Charlotte. He was a mass superstar. And, you know, the guy was a hell of a worker. Tremendous worker, tremendous interviewer. Not a wild, crazy guy, but, you know, real, you know, intelligent, intellectual interviewer, like a mass guy, you know, would have to be. I guess, you know, he couldn't, you know, it'd be hard to sell everything, you know. So he was very mannered, like what Wrestling 2 was. You know, very intelligent interview. But his work, his size, you know, he's 6'2", 6'3", 255, 260, you know, bigger, good size, 245 plus. Anyway, and good work. Hey man, I'm going along with him, you know. You know, didn't hold hands or anything, but you know, he was a local. He was a local and living in Atlanta, so he pretty much had his own life there. You know, all the guys that were, you know, from out of the town didn't you know mix. You know, he didn't mix a lot with the guys that were living there. And then Barry Darso, I didn't know Barry till he came in as the Demolition. So I never knew him before. That's the only time, and I never got around him. Those guys, when they once that Demolition, they pretty much just hung together, and you know, they never bothered anybody. They just kind of, you know, they went to the gyms, killed time, you know, and saved their money and put, you know, so they had, you know, had all those good runs with them, all those good tag team runs, you know, with all the guys that went through Bulldogs and Road Warriors and whoever had to be around, you know.
With Bill Eadie, what made him so good? Because it seems that only people who are really in the know put Bill Eadie as one of the all-time greats as far as wrestlers are concerned. You know, the people who actually work with always put him as one of the top guys.
Athleticism. He was defense. Well, you don't know. There's a lot of, not everybody listening is in Europe, but he was the defensive backfield. Played defensive back in Georgia Tech. I'm not school. He went to Southern College there, and he was a defensive backfield, or defensive back, which is a smaller, quicker. Well, he was like almost 6'3", and then he must have, he built up after that. He's probably played at about 185, 195. And then by the time but he was athletic, could move, knew what he was doing, timing, psychology, and working with the mask is kind of a different trip because you can't use your limited as far as expressions go, and working, and selling holes and registering and showing fear, being scared when the baby fight. I always had the long hair and shaking and baby, begging and, pleading and everything else. They don't have, a guy with a mask doesn't have that much expression, and it's with their hands, they have to get that across.
Why do some people like wearing masks? Is it because of like being self-conscious, or it just adds to their presentation, or what do you think?
I don't know. Just don't want to be known as a professional wrestler. Don't like care. For guys like Dick Byers, it was a financial. For him, it was a financial. It worked for him, and he just lived in it. He used to ride in the trains in Japan, the mask, go around. Always had it on in LA. Always had it around when he was in mini AWA. Always had the mask going. He lived and died with mask.
And it de-aged him as well. It made him more, ageless. As his face aged, but the body stayed, fairly similar.
Yeah.
I will move on then. 80s wrestling fan says, Fall 1986 was an angle when you and Adonis and Orton beat up on Roddy Piper during a Piper's Pit versus Flower Shop segment. How close were you to each of them behind the scenes? Did you hang out much after the shows with them? We know you did. Did you particularly enjoy tagging with or facing any of those three? Would it be worth us watching that segment and we can deconstruct it, or do you know it off by heart and you can talk us through, the segments and turning Roddy Piper good guy?
That flower shop thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how I got out there. I was doing some other things, but ended up I was a advocate for Adrian for something, and Piper was slowly changing. As he would, as was his MO, he would come and as, his promos and stuff, and he would get over and get tremendous heat for a period of time. They could pull it off. And then, he'd keep himself strong. The matches, have good interviews. Eventually people, the people turned him babyface.
I think, do you know what? I think it'd be a good idea if we actually watched it. But before we do, I'm reminded, I remember specifically about people booing Adrian Adonis. And in 1986, you yelled at the crowd, "This is America. You have the right to dress however you want." And everybody booed you. And I was thinking, man, if you cut that in 2022, everybody would be like, "Yay, Don."
That's what I said. Like shaving Hades' head and tape, they like taking Haiti kid prisoner and stuff,
Well,
they brought him along a lot of those shows too with D, and he showed up in a lot of the, not a lot, but he showed up in a lot of the couple of those big shows, Philadelphia's and Boston's and stuff like that. So he made a good payday out, not only getting his head shape, but coming around,
Been awaiting. It's going to be the Flower Shop versus Piper's Pit. So with that in mind,
there we go. This is the right one, I think.
Let's bring you now to the one and the only Roddy Piper as he prepares for his confrontation against the one and the only.
You are in this one.
In the flower shop. Here now.
What the hell am I doing?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to work out. Well, you were hanging about with Adrian and the Cowboy at the time.
What an ovation. What an ovation.
How come Roddy Piper was so loved? I mean, he was hated, disappeared, and he turns back and everyone loves him.
There we go.
And now, here's the host of the flower shop, adorable Adrian.
Thank you, Jimmy. This week, my special guest on the flower shop is none other than AC Bob Cowboy Horton, the super bodyguard of 1995.
Of 1995.
Well, my reasoning for this week's flower shop to have you out here is to have your biased opinion on who is the best.
Did Bob ever wear the pink hat outdoors?
And who has the best show on wrestling today? Please give me the answer from the bottom of your heart.
Well, Adrian, without a doubt, you have got the best show on television. Point A, you have class here. You have flowers. You have colors, not drab, plaid, like Roddy Piper's pit. That's old hat, Daddy. Point B, Roddy Piper insulted a lot of people, and Roddy Piper needed a backbone.
Honky Tonk Man always says that he would have really loved all the money that went to buying the fresh flowers for these shows.
Because people knew he had to come through me to get
If it's money, no object. One time.
You sure are an ugly son of an unnamed gold, aren't you, man? And you couldn't hold my jock strap on your backstage.
Point C, which I'll get to right now. Point C is that every time Roddy
How did they
Piper
break
and I
up?
were together, who was it that
Must have
carried
missed
the load?
something hit him with the
I carried
tin
the
thing.
load, Daddy.
I don't think they
You
did
all
break
the
up.
talking,
What, you mean
and
Cowboy
stole
Orton?
all
Or
the
you mean
glory.
Roddy and
You
Adrian?
were the
Yeah.
best.
No, you were the best. You
You're
were
the best.
No, yeah,
You
Cowboy
made
and
him
Roddy.
You made him a star.
Cowboy and Roddy, I think it's when Roddy disappeared, Cowboy just went with Adrian, was paired up with Adrian,
Oh,
and then he started wearing the
yeah.
pink hats and stuff, and then this is where they basically break up.
This would be much better on you, would it? Is that what you're saying? No.
You do turn up here. I'm trying to figure out where, though. You were in the preview.
This is the flower shop.
Why?
No, I'll tell you what, I'm going to forward it on. You're just going to argue a bit. Ah, here you are.
In Chair's absence, he is a man of note, and he is not only a great wrestler, but a great commentator. His name is Magnificent Muraco, and I would like to thank him while he's been gone for doing a tremendous job of imitating me, and I think that you're great, and thank you for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure being on the body shower.
That's right, it's a pit. There we go.
Well, I never considered myself actually as imitating you.
Well, obviously because I don't stutter like you do. I can understand that. Not only that, I don't dress my shirt in this. Have you noticed this cute little bow we got here, just above the neck? I'm just teasing with you now. See the flower shop? You see it always had color? There's no color to this. There's that.
Is that what you would have
See you
worn?
later.
Was that just your street clothes?
You know,
The whole Miami Vice looking
you
thing?
really got a lot of
Yeah, I
room.
guess, yeah. Still the Miami
You have one
Vice thing
t-shirt,
hanging up,
one
and
skirt,
you know.
and the little belt that you wear around. Kilt, excuse me.
Oh, and I suppose you think you're Don Johnson, huh? You're hanging around
yeah,
like
there you
this,
go.
huh?
Oh, yeah.
My credentials, I put
I'm
my
still
time
running,
in.
yeah, probably
I have
just
never
start.
imitated no man.
You have never imitated no man. You again. Let me tell you something. The flower shop, Mr. Muraco, you know yourself.
So it's basically what's termed as the original click, even though you weren't like the click like the 90s click, all together on screen.
Prize-winning petunias. Tulip fantastically.
And where the hell did I get those pants?
I always like to keep a little something for my guests, and I thought you might like this. And I think,
So, I mean, obviously, you know, Roddy's going to break up with you three, and he's going to turn good guy and everything.
And if you want to fool around,
How much practice or how much working out between the four of you would it take to produce this segment?
An intelligent individual to be treated as
chest as a man.
No, just well, I got an idea of this. He's gonna rub on me. Not that long. We'd have to sit down and.
This is America. We are allowed to dress as we want, come as we want, go as we want, do exactly what we please. I have children. I don't want my children watching this idiot. I do not want it. This is a free spirit. You can deny. That's why he has that much more class. That's why his ratings are that much higher. That's why he is much more of an intelligent individual than yourself. So you want to tell me, Roddy Piper, just how bad you can be. I've known here, and I've known for a long time. You've been jealous of me. You've been jealous of my job in the box. Let me tell you something, fatso. Yeah, you just said, who you calling fatso? Who am I calling fatso? Take your choice. Huh?
One of those things where, God, that escalated quickly. I mean, in later years, superstars would definitely, well, probably in the early years as well, they'd have to do crowd sweetening, but you can tell that there's no crowd sweetening here. There's a lot of screaming and hollering going on, definitely, so it's effective. We'll leave it there. There's more of a beatdown and everything. Oops, there we go.
Okay.
There we go. You were just more into watching it. Is that the first time you've seen it since it happened, or have you ever seen it?
Years, yeah. I maybe seen it once or twice before.
Yeah, so you're saying before...
Years.
Sorry, so you're saying before, like, how much planning would go and, beforehand to work out who would say what and when, and... would you plan some specific insults to get to the next stage of the confrontation? And who initially came up with the idea to have the competing talk shows?
Office, I guess. Piper, maybe when they're setting up for that angle there. I don't know. I don't know how I got even involved in it. They broke me off with Bob, and I was whatever I was doing, Fuji Vices or whatever. Yeah, so it must have been still doing the wannabe Don Johnson thing. So
you were doing the body shop because Jesse had left.
Okay.
And then I don't know if the flower shop replaced it. The flower shop probably replaced it. And then when Roddy turned up, the Piper's Pit ended up competing.
I think I was doing mostly heels because I don't remember. I don't remember starting doing any angles or anything with anybody out of that. So like Mulligan or different guys like that, interviewing mostly heels, guys I'd put over, kiss their ass and stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually, you did interview Ricky Steamboat as well.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, and you basically just had like a bit of tension, and you said something about Jake's snake, and that was it.
Mm.
Right, okay, I'll move on then. I'll ask a couple more, and then
that shows you how much time I spend watching my old tapes.
No, definitely. Right, so Rick Jones asks, if Don had an opportunity to go back throughout his career, how would he navigate the territories differently to achieve the most financial success?
Good God. If I knew then what I know now, if I wasn't, if you're never young, and you're old and patient and think, but when you're young, you wild, like a wild horse. You're just running through territory. If you got talent and everybody's got that seed, something in you, and you're doing it. So what if there's any one thing I would change? God, I'd have to go list after list, week by week, list by list. Shouldn't have done that. Should have done this. Should have been there. Should have done that. Shouldn't have been there.
Do you
That
think
goes to matches, interviews, everything.
where would it, let's say we're in 75, I think you would have been a bad guy in 75 by this time, and
Not yet. Australia.
Australia. Okay, right. So let's say when you're first a bad guy, then. So maybe like towards the later 70s. Where would you best monetize that, if not Florida or wherever else you were?
Where would I, or where could you?
I suppose where could one? Where could one monetize themselves the most as a bad guy and long term to make the most money?
Evidently Charlotte, where Flair and Wahoo, and you got hooked up with Wahoo, because Wahoo always had a program going. Wahoo's a guy you don't talk to, but he made the Houstons and the St. Louis's, and he would have a strap match or Jack Briscoe or Dory Funk Jr. or somebody, he'd always have a main event. He'd always have something going. And you don't know about, people. He was always, and he wasn't a favorite of the officers or anything, but he was, he had that, like Ernie Ladd, Ernie Ladd traveled all around all different territories. And that he had that first, when he came out from football, Bud Adams was the owner of the Houston Oilers at the time. And he hired Ernie. Ernie was the first guy to go under contract as a personal contract for $100,000 a year. And in the 70s, that was in the 70s. So we came back. We were in a air host hotel in Chicago after a big show one time, and we're back. And Vic Rosatani, and he's trying to hustle some guys up in a pool game, and Ernie was a good pool shooter too. So Vic is trying dropping the 9-ball, let him, and he's winning. He's building him up, and he says, "Oh God, come on, let's play. $100 or $500, whatever they're going for." Ernie pulls out his ticket. He says, "What does this say? Houston, 11:20. I just take the money and run." And did a big promo, And Vic everybody had a laugh at Vic because he's the one that got worked. He wasn't a guy that would spend money, but he was baiting the waters for Ernie. 20 and the 20 and the 20.
Do you think the best thing for you, if you could have done, was had one major feud with one guy and then tour that match, almost like a travel, almost like Andre the Giant? It's like a traveling spectacle that you go from one place to another to another to another. I mean, did two guys ever do that? Rather than Abdullah the Butcher would be in a territory for a month or so, then move on. Did two guys have a match that they would tour in a territory for a month and then move on to the next territory?
Well, there were crews. The guys had his crew, like Rogers. Rogers had a crew of guys, 5, 6 guys that would go in, set up the territory. Billy Darnell and a couple other guys. I think Skull Murphy was one of Buddy's heels, and they'd go in and they just murder everybody, just slaughter, like baby sheep, just slaughter everybody. Buddy would come in and and put everybody away. And he had a crew of guys. He went from territory to territory, that upper Ohio, upper New York. I don't know what exact areas, but one of those old territories, those old names like Al Hatz and Toots Mon, all those kind of names that go down. He said, so yeah, Rogers had a crew like that.
I'll ask one or two more, then I'll close down the podcast. Levi's Pop Culture Cave. Another question, did you actually call Nick Bockwinkel Captain Peckerchecker? The only reason I ask is because I heard Greg Valentine tell a story about it, and I wondered if it was true.
Yeah, it's true. He was Captain Peckerchecker. Hated me. I took him surfing to Mackay. He hated me. Because I befriended his brother.
Mm-hmm. And just for people who've not heard the story, why was he called Captain Pecker Checker?
Well, we had the drug testing. We started. Everybody started drug testing for coke. They just fly in. All of a sudden, they drop a medical crew on you. Could be some town, wherever he was. Whatever part of the week it was. He'd have to go in the bathroom, pee in a cup, and they could be down and get right in there. And so hence the name Captain Pecker Checker.
What were they testing for specifically? Was it just steroids and
cocaine?
Coke? Yeah,
cocaine.
Was there like a real cocaine problem in the 80s that forced their hand that they had to start testing?
Yeah. All organized crime. Everybody, CIA. The CIA had gone nuts. They screwed everything up. They brought cocaine and crack cocaine into all the black communities, black neighborhoods, and they got them addicted, and it was a big cash revenue for the government, but it spilt over into suburbia, where white people got the rock culture, rock and roll, and kids, everything else. Cocaine became a big recreational drug in the United States. It was meant for the blacks. It was meant for meant to go in the African American era and to sit, but they blew it.
What would be the fine? What would be the punishment if you came up positive, or if somebody came up positive?
Oh, suspension, termination.
So you wouldn't just get like a fine, then you'd get some real heavy. A real heavy punishment.
Yeah, probably fine and suspension maybe at first, and then gradually, I guess I never had but if you had continuously progressed, and didn't, then it goes to individual case. You about Jeff Hardy and these guys, getting all blasted and all wasted and, going out. So, you're running a big, multi-billion-dollar company. So you got to use everybody. You can't treat everybody the same, It's not an even-handed. It's not an even-handed fair proposition, You're making me more money than the other guy, so I got to kiss your ass, And the other guy your friend isn't making me nothing, so I don't give a damn about him. But but if I make kissing your friend's ass makes you happy, then I gotta, it's just the way it rolls. It's life, business, life, and just the way everything goes.
Yeah, you said it was the Nick Bockwinkel confrontation that ended up getting you thrown out. But do you think the drug testing was also brought in as an excuse to get rid of quite a lot of the guys who have been there for a while? Sort of a scapegoat to change up the roster a bit towards the end of the 80s.
Sure. It's a means of control. The more rules you have, the more control you have, over something. And it's hard, trying to monitor all that stuff after a while. You have to, that started seemingly harmlessly, with the Dr. Zaharian and the pills and the steroids out of the little ag hall center in Allentown to, mail order business and shots and, shit all over the place. So, everything else was just progressed.
And just before I let you go, how many people were in the room when you had to give your sample?
Oh, just by yourself, but then Nick would, Nick had all kinds of names for him back then.
All complimentary, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. I don't make a habit of getting filthy on my podcast, and I have a lot of respect for Nick Bockwinkel. You just didn't understand.
No. Okay, then I'm going to shut this podcast down, and I'll do the plugs one more time on dontherockmorocco.com for all your signed merchandise, my books, Owen, Hart, The Rock, and stuff. And I used to do other plugs for things like Instagram. I know you've got an official page on Instagram. I know I run the Twitter, and I say run, I mean I uploaded it and I don't really post anything to it. But anyway, they're out there, and that's pretty much going to be it. So thank you very much for joining us, and we shall catch you next week. Thank you, Dom.
All right, no law today. It's the word for today is proctologist.